Let's look at 7 myths about domestic violence to find out what's really going on. Now, this was in an article on RTE. It's about 7 myths about domestic violence, and it was actually written a couple of years ago now by Christie, Tetreault, I'm definitely butchering that name, I do apologise, of NUI Galway. Now, before I get into it, please like and subscribe to this video so it gets out there, and subscribe to the channel if you like the content that I make. So, let's get into them. Myth number 1. Only married couples experience domestic violence. Compared to couples who are dating or living together, married couples experience at least the least amount of domestic violence. This is partly due to the maturation process. As people age, they become less aggressive, and married couples tend to be older. The term domestic violence leads to a perception that couples who don't live together can't experience toxicity or abuse, and that is untrue. Younger, dating or cohabitating couples experience the highest rates of intimate partner abuse. This is why researchers and health organisations now use the term intimate partner violence, because the violence is based on the intimacy of the relationship, not the domesticality. I'm definitely screwing that one up. Again, I apologise. Meaning a couple can experience domestic violence even if they don't live together. I think this myth isn't as prominent as it used to be. I think it's kind of well understood now that domestic violence occurs outside the domestic setting. But yet, it's an interesting one that it actually lasted quite a while before it was debunked. Myth number 2. Men can sometimes be victims, but most abuse is suffered by women in heterosexual relationships. The heterosexual pattern for perpetration is 50% bidirectional, 35% female unidirectional, and 15% male unidirectional. The most common pattern of violence is bidirectional perpetration, meaning both men and women perpetrate equally in both frequency and severity of the violence. Unidirectional then means one partner perpetrates more often and more severe violence. The numbers show women abuse their male partners more. This applies to Western countries, as non-Western countries have very different patterns. And this was actually shown in the PASC report. Intimate partner violence is the only area of violence that sees women being more violent than men. But this doesn't mean women aren't victims. They are. Same-sex couples experience similar rates of violence, but lesbians experience more partner violence than women in heterosexual relationships. Along with the bidirectional rates, this shows that the gender paradigm, men perpetrate violence to attain patriarchy and women only hit in self-defense, is simply not evidence-based. Now, this is a myth that most people do believe, but it's a myth that's just wrong, and this is actually really well shown in the PASC project, the Partner Abuse State of Knowledge project, and it goes in very deep into this subject. Many governments run domestic violence policies based on a model of domestic violence called the Duluth model, which is based on the power and control wheel. And this portrays domestic violence as men beating women in pretty much all cases. But this model is not based on facts at all. It's based on ideology. Feminist ideology. And also the feminist theory that domestic violence is an attempt by men to attain patriarchal control with toxic masculinity is clearly false. Myth 3. women only hit in self-defence. With data from 52 countries, researchers have found that as gender empowerment, how politically and economically equal women are, as gender empowerment increased, women's unidirectional intimate partner violence also increased. Ultimately, the more equal women are in their society, the more they perpetrate domestic violence. Ireland is ranked third for high gender empowerment. Other researchers have found women initiate and retaliate more with physical violence than their male partners, and men don't hit back because they were raised not to hit girls. This is something I've been raised with. Never hit a woman. And it's something I agree with. But I think it's important that women need to be raised never to hit a man as well. And I think it's rather interesting that when women become more equal, they become more empowered in society, they become more violent in intimate partner settings. Myth 4. Women aren't as strong as men, so men don't get injured. During the course of one 24-hour period, researchers asked heterosexual men who were admitted to hospital if they had been abused by their female partners. Researchers found that 13% of 866 male patients were victims of intimate partner violence. 60% had been slapped, grabbed or shoved. 49% had been choked, kicked, bit or punched. And 37% were attacked with a weapon. Only 19% reported their abuse to police, and 14% required medical attention for their injuries. And bear in mind, this was in one A&E, in one city, in one country. While females are more likely to receive serious injuries from bidirectional violence, male victims get seriously injured as well. Men don't get injured because they are stronger than women. That line. Yeah, tell that to the men who are in the hospital after being beaten up by their partners. Tell that to Alex Skeel, who was beaten, stabbed, and scolded with boiling water by his girlfriend. And remember, not all domestic violence is physical. And women are just as good, if not better, at psychological and emotional abuse. Myth 5. Police and shelter reports give us the full picture of partner abuse. Police and frontline workers witness horrific crimes against women. However, police and shelter reports are biased towards only seeing female victims. Women report more to police, and bidirectional partner violence is perceived as male perpetrated when police are involved. So if they're beating each other up, it's considered male perpetration. Even when women were the aggressors, which they more likely are in bidirectional abuse, officers responded consistently with stereotypes and often only arrested the man. In terms of shelters, there's only one organisation in Ireland that helps male victims. For those of you who don't know, that's Men's Aid. The rest highlight how only men are the abusers, ignoring over 40 years of data on the bidirectionality of intimate partner violence. Male victims are not recorded in shelter data because no one is even looking for male victims now. If men aren't seen as potential victims, how the hell can they be counted? This is why researchers prefer to use scales like the conflict tactics scale. This is up to 16 times more sensitive than police reports in detecting all forms of partner violence. This is partly because it frames the questions as how partners resolve arguments, not if the actions are viewed as criminal. The scale also asks both partners to report both perpetration and victimization, increasing reporting and accuracy. The data that feminist groups use are stats from police reporting and domestic violence shelters. So as you can see, they're using biased reports that only show male perpetration and female victimization. But given the gender imbalance of domestic violence reports and the fact that men are much less likely to report being abused, it's clear why the information that feminist groups use to push domestic violence policy is just wrong. Myth 6. You're not really experiencing abuse unless you're hit. In previous year data, 13 to 20% of relationships have some form of violence, with 4 to 6% reporting severe intimate partner violence. The conflict tactics scale, which we've mentioned before, assesses emotional, cognitive, psychological, physical, and sexual coercion and aggression, minor or severe, to get a more holistic understanding of violence. Accusing my partner of being a lousy lover, or calling my partner fat or ugly, are two examples that assess verbal and psychological abuse, the two most common types of violence people experience. While these may not be criminal or severe, they are abusive and they are harmful. Verbal and psychological abuse are the most common forms of abuse, and behavioural studies have actually shown that women are more likely to engage in those forms, which kind of goes to that unidirectional perpetration of women perpetrating more than men. And finally, myth 7. Relationships with violence are the norm. All couples argue, but it is a question of how couples argue and resolve arguments and differences. While 50 to 60% of us will experience some form of intimate partner violence in our lifetimes, it is not part of a healthy relationship. It leads to chronic diseases and mental health illnesses, with psychological abuse being more strongly associated with poor health outcomes for both men and women. This is why it is crucial to look at the whole spectrum of abuse and not just physical violence. Now, this is an interesting one because it really shows how kind of one-tracked people who see domestic violence are. So many people see domestic violence as just physical abuse, when it is a lot more than that. It's psychological, it's emotional, it's sexual. And if we don't factor that in, we're not seeing the whole picture. Now, I know this is a topic that will affect some people. And if you are being abused, if you're a man, contact Men's Aid. Or even if you're watching this video and you're a victim and you're a woman and you're affected by domestic violence yourself, contact Women's Aid for support. They do great work. So what do you guys think? Tell me in the comment section down below. I'd love to help. And if you like this video, hit that thumbs up button and don't forget to subscribe to keep up with my latest videos. If you're being abused in a relationship, regardless of the gender of the perpetrator, so what do you guys think? If you are being abused in a relationship, regardless of the gender of the perpetrator or the victim, the best thing you can do is to leave, as violent relationships are not worth it.